Sometimes in FPV, we get a product. It comes out, it looks really cool, but when we take a harder look, we think, what the hell is this for? This isn't really one of those things. Hey everybody, I'm Bacon Ninja, and today we're going to look at the BetaFPV Pavo Pico O3. There's a lot of O's in that name. But this is actually a quad that when I first saw, I thought, who wants to buy an O3 little bitty whoop? That's just going to fly like trash. It's going to be too heavy. It's not going to be agile. It's going to be just a dog to fly. Who is going to want one of these? But I thought, it's kind of a cool idea. If it works, I could see the value in that. So BetaFPV actually sent me one of these, and I threw one of my own O3 Air units in it. We'll get to why I did that later. But the real question you probably have is, will this little digital 4K full capability O3 Air Unit whoop spang in the style of Bacon Ninja? Well, sorta? Yeah, just sorta, because that's not at all what this is made for. In my time with the Pavo Pico O3, what I've determined is that this is actually an amazing use case for the O3 Air Unit. I own two O3 Air units in my fleet, and I've had a really hard time identifying what in the hell I'm supposed to do with those things in my quads. I don't really care for the footage in my freestyle shots when I can carry a GoPro. I like the GoPro so much better than the O3 footage. Nothing wrong with the O3 footage. If you like it, more power to you. It's just not really for me. I don't like the color depth. I don't like some of the things it does. I'd prefer to have a GoPro. But there are times when you just can't get a quad carrying a GoPro into the place that you want to fly. And that's why this is so interesting. Because when I look at this, what I see is maybe one of the ultimate ways to do real estate photography inside of a house, or just get really safe 4K shots in a world where you don't have to worry about remote ID, because this is 70-ish grams with the O3 unit on it, and put another battery on that, you're going to run a little over 100, but still well under the 250 gram limit. You got a lot of capability in this. But before I show you how it flies and what I did with it, let's take a little bit of a look at it so you can kind of see what it's all about. The Pavo Pico platform is an 80mm whoop running a F4 20 amp AIO with ELRS built in. This is using BetaFPV's single wire ELS receiver, ELRS, not ELRS, ELRS. I have to enunciate all the letters. These acronyms are really killing me in FPV, and FPV is yet another acronym. But anyway, it's slinging 45mm Jim fan props on what is actually a carbon frame. It has a little carbon subframe in there. With the FC mounts to that carbon subframe, so do the motors and the props. The actual whoop part of the frame is just attached to the mounts for the FC and part of the carbon subframe. So it's kind of floating in there. It's really just duct protectors. Again, ducks and whoops are not really ducks or whoops unless the props are nearly touching it. And these are really just protectors. They're not technically ducks or whoops, but they're there for the occasional bounce on something. And we'll get to how many things I bounced on here in a minute, but sitting on top of that carbon subframe is your choice of a DJI O3 Air Unit or a Walksnail VTX, because this does come in either flavor, whichever one you prefer. Now, I think the best use case for this particular quad is probably the DJI O3, given that if you're going to get something this itty-bitty, you're probably going to want to use it for something where 4K is important. It is a little bit heavier whenever you have the O3 unit on. It's about 10 grams lighter if you were to go Walksnail, but with Walksnail, you're limited to 1080p. You don't have as many camera parameters, and the footage, if you're going to be using the footage, which you probably are if you're going to get something like this for the things I'm going to show you here in a minute, you probably want the 4K. It's probably going to work out best. What I really, actually, strangely like most about their design here is that they use this injection molded top frame not only to hold the camera in and give you a place to tuck the wire, but to hold these itty bitty cute little antennas that come with the frame kit on the back. Because on something this small, having a giant antenna flippity flopping around in the back is probably not good for the gyro traces on your flight controller. So rather than make you run that flippity floppity giant normal DJI O3 antenna, they give you two of their little mini dipoles, and it fits right onto this injection molded case, which is pretty cool. Now that you've seen it a little bit, let me talk about some specifics, because this is, if you go look on the website, about $110-ish, just a hair under. And they just recently restocked it, so you should actually be able to get it now. It's had been out of stock for a while. In fact, they did a batch 1 with a 12 amp AIO in it. This is batch 2 that has a 20 amp AIO. I highly recommend batch 2, which you'd be getting now if you order it. But it's $110-ish. So how are they going to send this to you for $110? Well, that's because it comes as a not complete kit. What you actually get in the kit is the frame kit, the motors, the carbon, the AIO, all of the injection molded parts, the props, the screws, all of that good stuff, but you have to bring your own VTX to the system. So if you're going to put an O3 Air Unit on, you're going to spend another $200 and something. If you're going to put Walk Snail on, you're going to spend $150-ish, maybe a little bit more, dollars. You're going to wind up spending some extra money on this. This is going to land you a $300 to $400 small whoop. And that's not really the kind of price range you want to be paying to fly something in your house for funsies. I mean, maybe some people out there are. It is a lot of fun to fly in the house. Don't get me wrong, flying the house is terrific. But if you're going to fly in the house, you can do that on something that costs $200. And if you obliterate it, it only costs you $200. This is more of a tool to go make money. And yes, it is sub 250 grams. And yes, if you want to go do something that makes money with this, you will have to run it as a Part 107 job, and you will still have to have remote ID on this. That is a whole different bridge to cross. I'm not going to dig off into that subject. But if you do decide to do something where you're going to do real estate photography, fly through a house, it's a very safe bet. If you're going to fly around people, very safe bet. If you're going to fly small spots, very safe bet. So what I did is I took this thing out on 2S because the AIO is 2 to 3S compatible. I ran my normal Tattoo 450 milliamp hour HV packs, my nice 2S's that I like to run on 2S-ish quads. 2S-ish quads. I have talking problems today. And I did a little bit of a mock real estate outdoor photography reel. I don't really have access to fly inside a house that is clean enough to show you real estate photography reel for. So I went to a newly constructed building that I fly at quite a bit, and I did some things. And yeah, I'm going to start playing that for you now. And basically, I just cruised this thing around on the 2S packs. I cruised it around outdoors. There was a little bit of wind, which you really can't see too much because the O3 unit is capable of using gyro flow in post, which I totally did with this footage, as you would with professionally done videography for things like real estate footage. Now, I did a little bit of color grading as well here, and I did some speed ramping and other things that you would generally do when doing professional real estate photography to make it look more appealing to the person watching the thing. So I just took it out and I cruised it and I looked at the buildings and I took it out further than I probably should have for such a small whoop. I flew it pretty far from myself. I had no issues at all with range given that this is an O3 Air Unit system. And even with ELRS, I run 250 milliwatts at 250 hertz. I didn't have any problems with the one-wire receiver. I got about 3 minutes of flight time out of this. This is kind of a heavy dog for an 80mm platform when you put an O3 on top of it. My batteries are also a little bit weak. They are a tad old, so you could probably get a little bit more flight time out of not so old of a battery, and flying a little less aggressively. I got into some pretty decent clips on this flying fairly fast, even though I'm running a really low camera angle here. I just decided to see what she would do, and I got about 3 minutes. You might be able to get a little bit more than that. That's totally going to be up to your flight style. But as you can see, this is really acceptable outdoor videography footage out of something that you wouldn't imagine is so small. I don't have any frame in view because the O3 camera is sitting pretty far out forward. I obviously don't have any props in view because they're well back. And it's really small and not threatening. If somebody saw me doing this outside of a house or outside of a property, they would just assume I'm flying a small hobby quad, just like a toy drone from the Wally World, because it's so small that it's just not threatening at all. It also doesn't make any like threatening hellacious sounds or have giant cameras on top of it that make it really obvious that I'm doing 4K recording. It's very good for the get in, get out real estate photography with no questions asked, where you are probably supposed to be there, but other people will likely hassle you at some point. So I actually enjoyed the experience of making this quite a bit. It was a whole lot of fun. And I'm not even that much of a cruisy guy. I had a lot of fun doing it. Now, what I'm going to tell you is that it's not all sugar-coated unicorn, fairy farts, and rainbows here. There are some things that you need to think about, because this is, when it comes down to it, a cruising utility camera-y thing. It is not made for the freestyles. You can freestyle it. You absolutely can freestyle it. It will do it. Will do it better than you would imagine, actually, for its size. It will not get very good battery life if you are freestyling it. In fact, I freestyled it and then talked to BetaFPV about how I had treated the quad and my experience treating the quad that way. And their first answer was, well, it's really more of a cruiser, because it absolutely is really more of a cruiser. It's too heavy of a dog to be a good freestyler, although you can do it if you really want to. You saw me do it earlier. Another thing that you're going to run into, and the reason why I have this blue frame, let me get something for you, is because they do have multiple color frame kits. You'll notice this one is mixed blue and black. There's a reason for that. This is a translucent white. It's pretty nice. Obviously, I have the blue on mine right now, but the reason that I'm not running the black, because mine did originally come with the black ducts, is because I actually cracked my black frame. Right there. Right there. I cracked that sucker straight open. And I actually did it in this crash here, where I was circling a picnic table and I was cruising around trying to be really smooth, and I totally whacked the post on the grill. Yeah, that's all it took. That broke the whoops. Now, you can't see this in the camera. It's black. This is a black frame. But what I can tell you is the black frame is going to be the weakest of the bunch. If you can get a different color frame, you're going to be better off. The translucent frames tend to be more rugged and durable. That's kind of the same thing we see in props. If you get a really dark tinted prop, it has a tendency to break more. If you get a more transparent prop where they haven't added dye to the raw materials, it tends to be tougher. And that's the same thing we're seeing here. The more translucent white and blue frame that they offer tends to be tougher. So if you're planning on doing more outdoor activities, you might go with something like that. I like the brighter color blue frame anyway because it's easier to find in a crash. I'd highly recommend either their clear white or the blue. If all you can get is black, is perfectly fine. Just don't expect it to hold up to every crash. This is a plus 100 gram small quad. It's an 80 millimeter plus 100 gram quad. The ducts aren't completely essential to the frame, so they're not being held in a ton of places like some Whoop frames would be, so they will break. It's going to happen. Just plan on that. I didn't have any problems out of props, motors, the AIO, any of that. Also, it only took me about 5 minutes to actually swap the frame out, because if you watch the instructional videos from BetaFPV, which are actually pretty good, assembling this whole thing is really easy. The AIO, all of that stuff is plug and play. The frame itself and the carbon components, super easy, just a few screws. Getting the top cage on with the O3 or the walk snail, if that's your choice, is super easy with just a few screws as well. It can all be done really easily. Now, another thing you want to look out for is the size of your batteries, because I do use these 2S tattoos like I was talking about, these little stick bad boys here. And if you look at mine, you can see it's pretty darn ripped up down here by the 450. There's a reason it's ripped up, because I tried to force it into the little slots for the battery in the frame, and it did not like it. It was not very forgiving at all about it. Now, in the box was actually one of BetaFPV's 2S packs that fit perfect. When you get the box, you're going to get everything built on the quad except for the VTX, and you're going to put it in the cage and screw it all together. Use BetaFPV's video and make sure your packs fit. You might want to just double check the measurements of that. If you need the measurements of this because you're thinking about getting one, let me know in the comments. I will go get my calipers out and let you know what I think the maximum is. I just shoved the packs I had in there, and most of them worked, but if they were just a little puffy, they didn't work anymore. Anyway, my verdict on this. It is a great little use case for the O3 system. This little quad is one of the best reasons to own an O3 Air unit that I currently have. It's very good for cruising, getting professional grade video out of a very small thing, about as small as you can get 4K different frame rate footage onto an SD card like you can with the O3 system, and getting the full capability and range of an O3 unit in such a small little quad while still getting 3-ish minutes. It would be nicer if it got more. That's just not going to happen, even if you use a bigger pack. The weight would just cause it to fly even more like a dog. It is surprisingly agile for what it is, but it is not a freestyler. Freestyle it at your own risk. You know I will absolutely keep doing it because I'll just break anything with props. Who cares? But if you actually want to invest your money in this and get something out of it, I recommend you just continue to cruise it, enjoy it for what it is, and pick up a spare frame because you'll probably need it. Now, the frame kits, I haven't seen the price on those, but I know that the price for the whole thing, minus the Air Unit or the VTX for walk snail, is about $104 for the O3 system one and just at $99 for the walk snail. So I can imagine the frame kit without the motors or the AIO is significantly cheaper. I would recommend that you just pick one of those up if you're planning on investing in this. Probably a good idea. But if you want to get into real estate photography or something small where you need a small quad that's not going to be suspicious and hurt somebody if you wreck into it or damage property if you hit it, and you're okay with the footage out of the O3 Air Unit for doing that, this is a darn good way to do it. And you're still going to spend $300 or $400. That's just going to be the crux of this, but that's going to be anything with the O3 Air Unit in it. What I'd really love to see in the comments below is if you'd be interested in seeing this kind of quad with Flywoo's new naked O3 Air Units, because I think that would just be really cool, and I kind of want an excuse to build one and ask Flywoo to send me one of those. I would love to try it. Also, let me know in the comments below if you do any professional work that you might consider using something like this for. So far, I've thought of the use case of real estate photography. That's pretty obvious. But what other use cases might you use this for if you're making money with a 107 or in another country where you don't need that 107? If you're making money flying this kind of thing, let me know. I'd be super interested. And yeah, that's it. Thanks, BetaFPV, for sending me this. Thanks to the patrons for allowing me to do spangy things with little whoops that should not be spangy things with, because they pay for all of my ability to continue to do this, and without them I couldn't. Thank you to both BetaFPV and those patrons. But until next time, stay greasy, and I'll catch you later. Now it's time to shout the patrons out as they scroll up from the bottom in all of their glory. I'm making them go extra slow this time so that we can really get to read the names of all of them, because each one of these people here is super special to this channel. I don't make any income on this channel, like nearly none, that isn't from these people or buy me a coffee. It's all community funded. There is a little bit of revenue that YouTube gives me, but it's very, very minuscule, and I couldn't do any of this without these people. They are seriously amazing. And if you want to be one of those people, I do have a Patreon link in the description below, and you can see your name over here and watch it scroll across my greasy little face, if that's your thing. And yeah, I'm also going to be hopefully posting more on the Patreon after I get done moving. This is one of the last videos you will see in this studio, because this studio is going away, and in my new location I will have a basement that will be further heretofore known as the Quad Dungeon, where all of this will be taking place. And I intend to fully show the patrons that prior to making a video there. So if you want to see that kind of thing, that's where it'll be. Anyway, thanks again. I truly appreciate it. Thank you all for watching to this point. Thanks to all those patrons that scrolled over my noggin. And yeah, until next time, like I said, stay greasy and I'll catch you later.